The message arrived at exactly 2:17 in the afternoon, just as the sunlight spilled through the windshield of my old pickup truck and painted golden streaks across my hands gripping the steering wheel. My phone buzzed once. I smiled without thinking because after 11 years of marriage, every notification from my wife still made my heart skip. I expected something ordinary, a reminder to buy milk, maybe a heart emoji, or a complaint about traffic. Instead, I read words that instantly turned the warmth of the day into something cold. Asterisk, the girls want company tonight. Don't wait up. Asterisk, for nearly a full minute, I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, but nothing came. Then, only 20 minutes later, I replied with a single photograph and one haunting sentence. Asterisk, recognize them? Asterisk, everything changed after that. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, forgiveness, and second chances still exist in this world, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone who believes in hope, and subscribe to A Journey of Hearts. Every subscription helps us bring more heartfelt stories that remind us humanity still matters. Until that afternoon, my life had been beautifully ordinary. My name is Rowan Mercer. I worked as a landscape architect, spending my days turning empty pieces of land into gardens where families would someday laugh together. My work wasn't glamorous, but it paid our mortgage, filled our refrigerator, and allowed my wife, Celine, to pursue the marketing career she had always dreamed about. She had transformed over the years. The shy woman I met in college had become confident, ambitious, and admired in her company. Promotions came quickly. Bigger clients followed. Business dinners became normal. Weekend conferences became expected. She always apologized for being busy, and I always smiled and told her I understood. Because that's what love looked like to me. Understanding. Trust. Patience. Yet lately, something had changed. She smiled less at home and more at her phone. She laughed into messages she never shared. She started dressing differently even on days without meetings. She insisted on keeping her phone face down. Whenever I asked if everything was all right, she kissed my forehead and said I worried too much. Maybe I did. Maybe every husband notices tiny things because love teaches you someone's habits better than any diary ever could. That Friday had started like every other summer afternoon. The sky was impossibly blue. Children chased bicycles through our neighborhood. Neighbors watered flowers. The scent of fresh-cut grass drifted through the warm breeze. I had finished work early and decided to surprise Celine with dinner at her favorite Italian restaurant. I even stopped by the florist and bought white lilies because she once told me they reminded her of the day we married. As I waited for the flowers to be wrapped, my phone vibrated with her message. Asterisk, the girls want company tonight. Don't wait up. Asterisk, I wasn't angry. Not yet. Disappointed, perhaps. We had planned dinner 3 days earlier. Still, friendships mattered. I was already preparing myself to spend another quiet evening alone when something unexpected happened. While driving home, I noticed 2 elderly women standing outside a city bus stop. One leaned heavily on a cane while the other kept checking a folded paper map with obvious confusion. Cars rushed past without slowing. Something inside me refused to keep driving. I parked and walked over. The women had traveled into town for a hospital appointment. Their return bus had been cancelled because of a parade blocking several downtown streets. They looked exhausted. One of them, Edith, admitted they hadn't eaten since breakfast. Without hesitation, I invited them into my truck. I drove them first to a small diner. They protested. I insisted. Over bowls of warm soup and fresh sandwiches, they shared stories about 60 years of friendship, raising children, losing husbands, surviving illnesses, and learning that loneliness was often heavier than age itself. Listening to them reminded me of my own parents. When lunch ended, they thanked me repeatedly. But something still bothered me. Neither woman had anyone nearby to help. So instead of simply driving them to another bus station, I offered to take them home. Their little town lay nearly 45 minutes away through peaceful countryside roads lined with wheat fields dancing beneath the afternoon sun. They accepted with grateful smiles. Along the journey we laughed more than I had laughed in weeks. Edith accidentally called me by her son's name. Margot insisted I was driving too fast despite barely reaching the speed limit. They teased each other like sisters. When we finally reached their neighborhood, they invited me inside for iced tea. Their tiny cottage overflowed with old photographs. Wedding pictures. Graduations. Family reunions. Birthdays. Life. As we talked, Margot asked if I could help move a heavy box from the attic. Of course I agreed. Inside the attic, sunlight streamed through dusty windows. Old furniture rested beneath white sheets. Family albums sat stacked beside worn suitcases. While lifting the box, I noticed another album lying open on a nearby chair. It must have fallen earlier. Without meaning to pry, my eyes drifted toward a recent photograph tucked inside. I froze. There, smiling directly into the camera, stood my wife. Beside her were two younger women. One arm around each of them. All three raised champagne glasses. The photo had clearly been taken recently. Far more recently than I expected. Curious, I gently asked about it. Margot laughed warmly. "Oh, those lovely young ladies visited our retirement center last month. They said they were volunteering for a community campaign. Such sweet girls." Edith nodded. "They spent hours talking with everyone." I looked closer. The two women beside Celine suddenly felt familiar. Not because I knew them personally. Because I had seen their faces before. On Celine's social media. They were supposedly the girls she always mentioned. Except something didn't fit. One of the retirement home's newsletters lay beside the album. The date. The event. The afternoon volunteer program. Everything had happened on a Saturday. A Saturday when Celine had told me she was attending a 3-day corporate retreat nearly 200 miles away. My stomach tightened. Not because she had volunteered. Because she had lied about where she was. Still, I refused to jump to conclusions. There had to be an explanation. Before leaving, Edith insisted on taking one final photograph together. She wrapped one arm around me while Margot stood on the other side holding a tray of homemade cookies. We all smiled. I thanked them for reminding me how beautiful simple kindness could be. Back inside my truck, I stared again at Celine's message. The girls want company tonight. Something inside me whispered that the truth had been hiding in plain sight for months. Instead of replying with questions or accusations, I simply attached the photograph Edith had taken moments earlier. The two elderly women smiled beside me. Then I typed only 4 words. Recognize them? I pressed send. The response came almost instantly. Where are you? Not, who are they? Not, what's going on? Only, where are you? Minutes later my phone rang. Then again. I didn't answer. I needed time to think. By sunset I arrived home. The lilies still rested untouched on the passenger seat. I placed them gently into a vase anyway. Our house felt painfully quiet. At exactly 7:30, Celine burst through the front door. She wasn't dressed for a girls' night. She looked frightened. Her makeup had begun to smear from nervous tears. She stared at me across the dining room. Neither of us spoke immediately. Silence often reveals more than shouting ever can. Finally, she asked where I had met the women. I told her everything. The broken bus. The lunch. The drive. The tea. The photograph. The retirement home. The volunteer event. She sat down slowly. Then something I never expected happened. She cried. Not the dramatic crying people perform after being caught. Real crying. The kind that leaves someone unable to breathe properly. Between tears, the truth emerged. Months earlier, her company had organized volunteer events at retirement homes. She had gone because attendance affected promotion opportunities. What she found there changed her. She met elderly people abandoned by children who rarely visited. She secretly continued volunteering every Saturday long after the company program ended. But she never told me. Why? Because one afternoon she had overheard coworkers mocking her for wasting weekends. They joked that compassionate people never reached executive positions. So she lied. She invented conferences, business retreats, networking events. Anything to hide where she actually spent Saturdays. The girls weren't drinking partners. They were co-workers who volunteered with her. The champagne picture had been taken after completing 6 months of volunteer service during a charity appreciation dinner. Then why tonight? Her shoulders sank. Tonight was another volunteer visit. One resident had become gravely ill. The women wanted to stay with her because no family members planned to come. Celine thought I'd be disappointed if another date night disappeared. So she lied again. Not because she was betraying me. Because she feared letting me down. I listened quietly. Then I walked into the kitchen. She probably expected me to leave. Instead, I returned carrying the vase of white lilies. I placed them gently before her. I wish you had trusted me enough to tell me. She nodded through tears. I know. Love isn't destroyed only by betrayal. Sometimes it is damaged by fear. Fear of disappointing someone. Fear of seeming imperfect. Fear that honesty might cost the relationship you treasure most. That evening we drove together back to the retirement home. The elderly resident they visited, Mrs. Celia Brooks, smiled faintly as we entered. She held Celine's hand like a granddaughter. I spent hours talking with lonely residents whose greatest wish wasn't expensive medicine or fancy meals. It was conversation. Presence. Someone remembering their names. As darkness settled outside, I realized the greatest misunderstanding of my marriage hadn't been infidelity. It had been silence. From then on, Saturdays became ours. We volunteered together. We repaired gardens. Painted fences. Read books aloud. Celebrated birthdays for people forgotten by almost everyone else. Months later, several coworkers learned the truth. Instead of mocking Celine, many joined us. Kindness spread quietly, one person at a time. Even our marriage changed. We stopped pretending to be perfect. We started telling each other uncomfortable truths before they became painful secrets. Trust returned not because mistakes disappeared, but because honesty finally arrived. Years later, when Edith and Margot celebrated their 92nd birthdays, they insisted we sit beside them for another photograph. This time there were dozens of smiling residents, volunteers, children, and families gathered together beneath the bright afternoon sun. Someone asked how we had all become friends. I smiled. It all started with one text message. If this story touched your heart, please pause for just a moment to like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to A Journey of Hearts. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need hope today. Special request * in the comments, write, kindness always finds its way home. We'd love to know how many hearts still believe that one act of compassion can change an entire life. As I looked at that final photograph, surrounded by people connected not through blood but through kindness, I finally understood something I had missed for years. Love is not measured by perfect days, expensive gifts, or flawless marriages. It is measured by the courage to tell the truth, the humility to forgive, and the willingness to keep choosing each other after life tests every promise we ever made. Sometimes the message that seems ready to end a relationship becomes the beginning of a deeper one. Sometimes a simple photograph reveals not betrayal, but purpose. And sometimes, the greatest miracle isn't finding someone perfect. It's discovering that two imperfect hearts can still choose compassion over suspicion, honesty over fear, and love over pride, every single day the sun rises again.